Did they pay Pawn Stars for this? Because he owns the company that graded this. Wouldn't that be like a massive conflict of interest there? They had to like a paid History Channel, right? Like there's no way. Okay, so someone more knowledgeable than me. Is this a new grading company? I assumed that this grading company was like 40 years old, like grading games for a long time. But it seems like they're not that old. It's the only one. So 2018 for that one, but there has to be an older one, right? I understand he talks about it, but I'm asking, isn't there like a really old one? Or are they all newer? Okay, so VGA is the old one. Thank you. Are people sending these games in to get graded by Wata? Or does Wata just have these on standby? Like they have these in stock and they sell them through Heritage? It is fraud. Yeah, this is absolutely fraud. Okay, so people are sending them in. So they're sending them in, they get graded, and then those people take them to the auction where they get exploited and fisted, right? For 20% plus an additional 5% of the sale. Oh, that's gotta be rough to see then, Pluto.
Hello, you absolute legends. In 2017, the most expensive video game ever sold cost $30,000. It was a mint condition, sealed copy of the original Super Mario Bros. In 2021, the most expensive video game ever bought cost $2 million. But this was a very special game. Oh, actually, it was the same game. That's an increase of over 6,000% for the same game in just 4 years. Something very strange is happening in the world of video game collecting. Headlines are flooding the internet describing new records set for insane prices. But this is an extremely recent phenomenon, and one that seems to have arisen overnight. For the past several decades, video game collecting has honestly been pretty niche. Truly dedicated collectors seemed to be few and
like
far
angry video
between,
game nerd.
and even if they did amass a respectable collection, there was little fame to be gathered from it. In contrast to something like the art world, where collectors represent the richest of society, flaunting their lavish purchases, video game collecting was mostly
Damn, wait, that looks nice.
Regular gamers,
Holy
nerds
shit.
in the truest sense, who were just so passionate about the hobby that they were happy to spend whatever spare cash they could scramble together to acquire a cart here or there, often as cheaply as they possibly could. Video game collectors weren't rich, but they didn't need to be either. Retro video games were never that expensive, therefore basically anyone could do it. And that was one of the great things about it. All you really
NFL
needed
Blitz
was passion and time. But in
I wonder if any of the games I have
2018,
are worth anything.
something happened that would change everything. The launch of a company called Wata Games. This was
that's
no
fucking
ordinary
crazy,
launch,
Dyson. Okay.
and Wata is no ordinary company. There is a select group of very wealthy, very powerful people who are pulling the strings behind this recent spike in video game prices, and those same people are making money hand over fist. When I heard the news of a $1.5 million Super Mario 64, this seemed too ridiculous for me to
Because I'd never
ignore.
even seen these
I knew
ratings
there
until
had to be more to the
Mizkif.
story than meets the eye, and boy, was I not wrong. This rabbit hole is deep. The bubble we are seeing in video games has been seen before in other collectibles for almost half a century. And the crazy thing is that each time it happens, the same people are involved. They know exactly what they are doing, and they know how to extract as much money as possible from suckers who believe the headlines. There is a lot of shady stuff going on, and you won't believe what I've found. This entire situation is fraught with unethical business practices, deception, collusion, and even fraud. By the end of this video, you will know exactly why this is happening, who is causing it to happen, and what needs to be done to stop it. I really hope you enjoy.
Thank you, that Kamito. I've said for a long time I think grading is a fucking
Now,
scam.
before we get into the specific details about how this entire racket works, there are some concepts that I want you to be familiar with so that you can better understand the context. The first is the difference between the intrinsic and extrinsic properties of an object and how they relate to perceived value. Intrinsic properties lie within the object itself. For example, if we were to examine a painting, the intrinsic properties would be the materials it was made of, and also, of course, how the painting actually looked.
That's like the
The
least
extrinsic
important
properties would
thing
be
of a
the
painting.
relationship the artwork
Most
had
of them
with
look like
everything
shit.
else. Who it was painted
Like a
by,
Jackson
when it
Pollock.
was painted, the context in which it was painted, and how sought after the piece is are all important qualities. When it comes to perceived value, it is the extrinsic qualities of a collectible that raises the cost significantly. Van Gogh paintings often sell for tens of millions of dollars. But
At least
if we
his
were
are
to
kinda
program
cool.
a robot to paint an identical piece, it wouldn't be worth much more than the cost of the paint and the canvas. Ultimately, both pieces would look the same on our wall. But us weird and wacky humans like to care about the details that don't directly impact us. We are even willing to spend millions of dollars more than
Quick
we
text
need
message,
to
goddammit.
because of these details. In the 17th century, during the Dutch Golden Age, an event happened known as Tulip Mania, where the price of tulip bulbs reached insane
Okay, there we
levels.
go.
At the time, tulip bulbs were a luxury item that were highly desired for their intense colors,
Thanks,
and
Resub.
as their
Hentai.
popularity slowly increased
And I
over the
heard-
years,
I'll check
the
it out later,
price
Cody.
inevitably went up. Eventually, people began noticing the trend of rising prices and started to speculate on the market. Speculating means buying a good not due to need, but purely in the hopes that the price will increase so that you can sell it at a later date for profit. With investors beginning to flood the tulip market, this began a positive feedback loop, driving prices up even more. As the price increased
Tulips
faster,
sound pretty
not
hardcore.
wanting to miss out on the opportunity, even more people started buying in. This caused the first recorded speculative bubble in history, and there are
Thanks,
two
Resub.
important
Beef and
things to
Cubone
know
and
about these
Architect.
types of bubbles. First, no one buying
Did not
actually
see that
wants
neon.
tulips. They just hope to
Sounds
make
awful.
money. And secondly, this process is not sustainable, and eventually people stop buying, and the price crashes. Those left holding tulips lose everything as their value plummets back to normal.
Yeah,
I
well,
want
don't
you to
buy
remember
tulips,
this process,
idiots.
because the exact same thing is happening with video games right now. But the difference is that this current video game bubble isn't an accident. You see, if you know how speculative bubbles
Hey,
work,
Beanie
you can
Babies! Fuck
theoretically
yeah.
create them at will.
I remember that
All
bubble.
you would have to do is raise the perceived price of a good quick enough so that speculators see the trend and start entering the market. Then, you can just sit back and let the positive feedback loop do the work. Profiting
Thanks,
from
Resub
your
Rocksman.
artificially created bubble by buying games early and selling later is rather obvious. But there are actually smarter ways to make money, ways that
First
incur
gaming console
far
I did
less
was
risk.
Nintendo
In the
64.
current video game market and the collectible market in general, there are two institutions that stand to gain the most from increasing prices. Those are grading companies and auction houses.
Grading
A
companies are a
company is
scam.
a business that
Scam.
inspects games,
Big fucking
certifies
scam.
them, and gives them a rating of quality. They are basically quality assurance. They allow buyers to know exactly what they are getting, which enables quick and easy transactions. In a bubble, people are flocking to get their games graded in the hopes of profiting from the increasing prices. But it's not just the extra business that helps grading companies, as they also take a percentage of the market value when grading a game. A game worth $10,000 might cost around $400 to have graded, but if that exact same game was valued at $1
course I've taken
million,
a shit outside
it
before.
would cost over $20,000 to have graded. It's a pretty good deal. But the institution that really profits the most by far is auction houses. Take Heritage Auctions for example, which is where all of the current record-breaking video game sales are taking place. They charge a 20% buyer's premium on every sale. So if you buy a video game for $1 million, you need to pay the auction house $200,000 on top.
Holy
And
shit!
just for shits and giggles, they also take 5% from the seller as well. You can begin to see why
Who
grading
would do
companies
that?
and auction houses would really want prices to go up. It's in their interest. This is also why grading companies and auction houses should never be speculating on the price of goods or impacting markets directly. They have a
Holy
huge
shit.
conflict of interest. And whenever you see a grading company or an
I would
auction
never do
house
that.
talking about how
I don't
valuable
grade
games
shit.
are,
I don't
you
buy
know
graded
it's
shit on
because they
purpose or
want to
anything.
drive prices
I don't
up.
go to auction houses
Again,
to
you'll
buy
need
graded
keep
shit.
all of this in mind. I'm going to provide you with a ton of information, and I'm going to trust you to connect the dots. If you are really interested in learning what's going on, I suggest writing down details as we go, or watching sections more than once. Let's begin. The two institutions that you will become very familiar with are Wata Games, the video game grading company, and Heritage Auctions, the auction house. Wata Games was founded in 2017, but it didn't officially launch until April of 2018. Wata Games is the linchpin behind this entire bubble, and the certification that Wata provides is the
Does
justification
Wata stand for
why they
something,
are
or is it
sold
just
at
literally
such high
Wata?
prices. Interestingly, Wata wasn't the first video game grading company to exist. In fact, the Video Game Authority, aka
Oh, he does talk
VGA,
about
has
it.
been grading games since 2008. But the introduction of VGA
Still not that
didn't
old.
cause a bubble like the introduction of Wata Games did. And the reason is simple. VGA didn't manipulate the market or go out of their way to create
Still a
bubble.
scam. Still a
The same
scam. Fuck
can't
grading.
be said for Wata, however. The president and CEO of Wata Games is Dennis Kahn, and he is a key player. The other important company, Heritage Auctions, was founded in 1976 by Steve Ivey and Jim Halperin.
Our album's coming out on vinyl isn't like a collector thing.
But Jim, on the other hand, is critical. Heritage Auctions are in the business of selling rare collectibles and memorabilia. They sell coins, comics, art, anything you can collect that has value. And in 2019, they started selling video games. But not just any video games, only games that had been graded through Wata Games. The interesting thing about the relationship between Wata and Heritage is that it seems to have existed before Wata even began grading games. On the initial website of Wata, when it launched, it had a dealer spotlight section where it listed key relationships. One was Heritage Auctions, where it stated that Wata-certified video games will be featured in Heritage online auctions. This doesn't make sense. The entire point of certification is to guarantee authenticity and quality, but a guarantee is worthless if you haven't established a history of accurate work. Why would Heritage Auctions, a prestigious auction house, agree to sell games from a company that hadn't graded a single game? Why would they trust a business
because
that
Dennis
hadn't
looks
even
smart.
done any business to begin with, when there was already an existing grading company that had been grading games for 10 years? The only explanation to me is that Heritage Auctions